Now, let's begin. The October rain hammered against the windows of the cramped apartment as Stuart Waller unpacked his duffel bag for the last time. 18 months in Afghanistan had aged him in ways that had nothing to do with the gray creeping into his temples. His hands, steady enough to field strip an M4 in the dark, trembled slightly as he pulled out the framed photo he'd carried through Kandahar in Helmand province. 7-year-old Lucas grinning gap-toothed at a baseball game. Cotton candy stuck to his cheek. The apartment felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. When Johanna had written saying she'd move them to somewhere more suitable, he'd pictured a better school district, maybe a house with a yard where Lucas could play. Not the sterile box in her mother's building, where every wall seemed to whisper that he didn't belong. "Daddy!" Lucas burst through the door, all knobby knees and oversized sneakers, but his embrace lacked the wild enthusiasm Stuart remembered. The boy's hug was careful, almost formal, like he'd been coached on proper greetings. "Hey, champ." Stuart lifted his son anyway, ignoring the stiffness. "Man, you got big. What they've been feeding you?" "Grandma Norma makes me eat vegetables now." Lucas wrinkled his nose, but didn't smile. His eyes, Johanna's eyes, darted toward the hallway where his mother stood, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line that Stuart had learned meant trouble. "Lucas, go wash up for dinner," Johanna said, her voice carrying that new edge he'd noticed in their video calls. The warmth that had drawn him to her a decade ago had evaporated somewhere between his second and third deployment. The boy scurried off without argument, without the usual protest, and that wrongness settled deeper into Stuart's gut. "We need to talk," Johanna said, not moving from the doorway. She looked different too. Designer clothes he couldn't afford on his salary, fresh highlights in her hair, manicured nails drumming against her arm. "My lawyer sent the papers to your CEO, but since you're back now, we can handle this directly." "Papers?" "The divorce shouldn't be a surprise, Stuart. You've been gone more than you've been here. Lucas barely knows you anymore." She delivered clinically, like she'd rehearsed the words. "My family has been helping me realize that this isn't the life I signed up for. That Lucas deserves better than a father who's always deployed or getting ready to deploy." Stuart set down the photo frame carefully, buying himself a moment to process. He'd sensed the distance growing, felt it in the shorter calls and delayed responses to his emails. But divorce? "I'm out now. Terminal leave until my contract ends. Then I'm done. We talked about this, Joe. I do my time, then weed." "It's too late." She cut him off with a wave of her hand. "And there's something else. My mother's lawyer will be filing for full custody. We think it's best if Lucas stays with us. You can have supervised visitation, of course, but given your condition." "My condition?" Stuart's voice dropped dangerously low. "The PTSD, the nightmares, the anger issues. My mother witnessed your last phone call with Lucas. How you raise your voice when he couldn't hear you over the connection lag. She's documented everything, Stuart. The instability, the potential for violence. I never. You're a trained killer." Johanna's words struck like artillery. "That's what my mother's lawyer will argue. That you're dangerous. That Lucas isn't safe with you. That your deployments have made you unfit." The hallway seemed to tilt. Stuart gripped the edge of the table, his mind racing through every conversation, every video call, seeing them now through a different lens. The way Norma Henderson had started appearing in the background more frequently. The questions she'd ask Lucas about Daddy's angry moments. The concerned looks Johanna had started giving him whenever he mentioned coming home. "This is Norma's doing," he said quietly. "Your mother's been planning this. My mother has been here for us. She's been the stable presence Lucas needs. She's helped me see clearly." Johanna's chin lifted defensively. "You can contest it if you want, but you won't win. We have everything documented. You should just make this easy on everyone, especially Lucas." "Where is this coming from?" Stuart moved toward her, watching her flinch back. The fact that his own wife recoiled from him burned worse than any insult. "Joe, I love you. I love our son. I did everything right, sent money home, called whenever I could, counted down the days until you could come back and disrupt the life we've built without you." She shook her head. "I'm sorry, Stuart. I really am. But this is happening. Mom's lawyer says with your record, your deployment history, the documented incidents. What incidents? I've never laid a hand on either of you. But you could. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That's what the evaluation will show. That you're capable of violence, that you've been trained in it, that the military has broken something fundamental in you. It's for the best. For everyone. She left then, her heels clicking down the hallway, leaving Stuart standing in the middle of an apartment that smelled like someone else's life. Through the thin walls, he could hear Norma Henderson's voice, sharp and commanding, talking to someone on the phone. Planning. Strategizing. He found Lucas in the bathroom, sitting on a closed toilet lid, staring at his hands. The boy looked up when Stuart knocked softly on the doorframe. You okay, champ? Lucas nodded, but his eyes were wet. Are you really dangerous like Grandma says? Stuart's heart cracked. He knelt down, bringing himself to eye level. No, buddy. I'm not. I'm your dad. I'd never hurt you or anyone in our family. You know that, right? Grandma says soldiers come back broken, that they can't help it. Lucas's voice was barely a whisper. She says you might not even know you're broken. What else does Grandma say? The boy's face crumpled. She says if I love you, I want to stay with them. Because you can't take care of me properly. She says it a lot, Daddy. Every day. And Mom agrees with her now. Stuart pulled his son into a hug, feeling the small body shake with suppressed sobs. Over Lucas's shoulder, he saw Norma Henderson standing in the hallway, watching them with cold calculation in her eyes. She didn't look away, didn't pretend she hadn't been eavesdropping. She just smiled, a thin, satisfied curve of her lips that promised this was only the beginning. It's going to be okay, Stuart whispered to his son, even as he locked eyes with Norma. I promise you, everything's going to be okay. But as Norma turned and walked away, he heard her mutter, just loud enough for him to catch. Promises from a man who's never here. How touching. That night, after Lucas had fallen asleep in the room they were apparently meant to share. Another humiliation, not even a separate space for a returning soldier in his own family's life. Stuart sat in the dark and thought about warfare. Not the kind he'd trained for in Kabul, but the kind being waged right here, in family court, in whispered conversations, in the systematic dismantling of his parental rights. He'd faced enemy combatants, survived IED blasts, led men through firefights. But this was a different battlefield with different rules. And Norma Henderson had been maneuvering on it for months while he'd been overseas, defenseless. His phone buzzed. A text from Mark Singh, his buddy from the service, one of the few people who'd stayed in touch consistently. Heard you're back. Be here tomorrow. Got something you need to see. Stuart typed back, 1800 hours. Same place. He had 18 days until the custody hearing. 18 days to figure out what Norma Henderson was really after and why she'd spent months poisoning his own wife against him. He pulled out his laptop and started doing what he did best, reconnaissance. But this time, the enemy wasn't hiding in mountain caves. They were sleeping 3 rooms down the hall, probably dreaming about their victory. The bar where Stuart met Mark Singh the next evening was the kind of place that didn't ask questions. Low lights, sticky floors, and a bartender who'd seen enough to mind his own business. Mark was already there, nursing a beer, his leg propped on a stool in a way that told Stuart the injury from Hellman still bothered him. You look like hell, Mark said by way of greeting, sliding a beer across the scarwood table. Feel worse. Stuart took a long drink. Joe's leaving me. Her mother's going for full custody. Mark's expression darkened. Yeah, about that. I did some digging after you told me things were getting weird with the phone calls. Called in some favors. He pulled out a folder, thick with printouts. Stuart, man, I think you need to see this. The first page was a property record. Norma Henderson had purchased a beach house in Florida 6 months ago. Cash sale. $300,000. Her social media says she's a retired teacher, Stuart said slowly. There's no way. Keep going. Bank statements. Obtained through means Stuart decided not to question. Regular deposits into Norma's account. All from the same source. Henderson Family Trust. $50,000 a month, like clockwork, for the past 18 months. The exact length of Stuart's deployment. What trust? Joe never mentioned any family money. Mark tapped another page. Because it's not an inheritance. Look at the trust documents. It was established 8 months before you deployed, naming Lucas as the sole beneficiary upon his 18th birthday. $2 million transferred from. He paused, letting Stuart read it himself. Stuart's vision tunneled. The money had come from his own father's estate. His father, who died 3 years ago, leaving everything in what Stuart thought was a simple will. But there, in the fine print he'd signed off on while grieving and preparing for deployment, were the terms. Lucas would inherit at 18. Until then, his primary guardian would have access to the trust for expenses related to his care and education. Primary guardian, not parents. Guardian, singular. If Joe has custody, Stuart said, his voice hollow, then her mother has access to manage $2 million for the next 11 years. Mark finished. I found more. She's already been pulling from it. The beach house, a new Mercedes, the apartment they moved into, it's all in her name, all charged against Lucas's future educational and housing needs. Stuart's hands clenched around the beer bottle. She's been planning this since before I even deployed. She knew about the trust terms. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. She convinced Joe to move in with her. Started the alienation campaign while I was overseas and couldn't defend myself. There's worse. Mark pulled out another sheet. Your father-in-law, Raymond. He's a silent partner in a real estate development company. Want to guess who their biggest investor is? Henderson Family Trust. Bingo. They're using Lucas's inheritance to fund Raymond's business ventures. If you get custody, or even joint custody, you could audit the trust. See where the money's really going. They can't risk that. Stuart sat back, his mind racing through scenarios. So, they need me completely out of the picture. Not just divorced, stripped of all parental rights. No ability to question how they're spending my son's inheritance. And they've been building their case for months. I bet every documented incident they have is manufactured bullshit. The angry phone calls probably baited you while recording. The PTSD evaluation, I'm betting they're shopping for a psychologist who will diagnose you sight unseen. Mark's expression was grim. They're not playing fair, brother. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Stuart looked at the evidence spread across the table. Norma Henderson had made one critical mistake. She'd assumed he was just another deployed grunt, too tired and broken to fight back. She'd underestimated him. I'm going to war, Stuart said quietly. But first, I need more ammunition. The next morning, Stuart drove to the one place he knew would have answers. His father's attorney, Danny Burns, a grizzled veteran himself who'd handled the estate. The office was in a strip mall, sandwiched between a tax preparation service and a dry cleaner. But Burns had a reputation for being sharp despite the shabby surroundings. Stuart Waller. Burns looked up from his desk, genuine surprise crossing his weathered face. Heard you were back. How's civilian life treating you? Like a combat zone. Stuart laid out the evidence Mark had gathered. You drafted my father's trust. Tell me you didn't see this coming. Burns's expression shifted from surprise to anger as he reviewed the documents. Son of a bitch. I argued against those guardian terms, told your father they were too vague, could be exploited, but he was convinced family court would never separate a boy from his father over nothing. He trusted that the system would protect his grandson's interests. He looked up at Stuart. Your mother-in-law came to me 6 months after your dad passed. Asked detailed questions about the trust structure, about what would happen in various custody scenarios. I thought she was just being thorough, protecting Lucas's interests. She was protecting her own. I should have seen it. Burns pulled out a file from his cabinet. But here's the thing. Your father included a clause I insisted on, buried deep in the paperwork. If there's any evidence of trust mismanagement or fraud, the trustee can be removed and potentially face criminal charges. And Stuart, you're named as the backup trustee. You just need legal standing to audit it, which I lose if I don't have custody. Exactly. But if you can prove they're deliberately trying to remove you for financial gain, the whole custody case becomes fruit of the poison tree. Burns leaned forward. You need to document everything. Every dollar they've spent, every property they've purchased, every business deal Raymond's made using trust funds. And you need to prove Norma orchestrated this entire custody battle as a fraud. Ow! The same way they're trying to take you down, documentation, recordings, witnesses, evidence of their real motives. Burns pulled out a card. I'm giving you a name. Patrick Sims. He's a forensic accountant, works mostly with divorce cases, follows the money. If anyone can trace how they've been bleeding the trust, it's him. Stewart pocketed the card. Danny, if this goes to court and I present evidence that they've been defrauding Lucas's trust, what happens? Criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement if they can't account for the money. Potential RICO if Raymond's business dealings are dirty enough. Burns met his eyes. But Stewart, you need to be clean on this. They're going to paint you as unstable, violent, dangerous. You give them any ammunition, any sign that you're the person they're claiming you are, and a judge won't care about the trust fraud. They'll take your son anyway. I can play by the rules when I need to, Stewart said. I've just never liked fighting with one hand tied behind my back. Then don't. You're allowed to defend yourself, to gather evidence, to expose the truth. That's not dirty. That's justice. Burns stood, extending his hand. Your father was a good man. He'd want you to fight for his grandson. Whatever you need for my end, you've got it. Stewart shook his hand, feeling something shift inside him. For the first time since Johanna had blindsided him with the divorce papers, he wasn't reacting. He was planning, and he was damn good at planning. Patrick Sims turned out to be a nervous man with quick eyes and faster hands on a keyboard. His office was a cluttered space above a sandwich shop, every surface covered in file folders and coffee cups. But his references checked out. Burns trusted him, and that was enough. Henderson Family Trust, Sims said, pulling up bank records on his screen. Oh, this is going to be fun. They've been sloppy. Probably thought no one would ever look. Look here. He pointed to a series of transactions. They're not even trying to hide it. Beach house, car payments, country club memberships, all coming straight from the trust account. Is it illegal? Depends on how it's justified. They could claim the beach house is for Lucas's vacations. The car is for transporting him. The country club gives him social opportunities. It's ethically bankrupt, but proving it's illegal requires showing intent to defraud. Sims scrolled through more records. But this is interesting. A series of wire transfers, each for exactly $9,900, just under the federal reporting threshold. All going to the same LLC. Raymond Henderson's company, Stewart guessed. Bingo. And look at what they're buying. Sims pulled up property records. Vacant lots in rural counties, cheap land with no obvious development potential. They're buying it through the LLC, which is funded by the trust, and then he clicked through more documents. Selling it to shell companies at a massive markup. Classic money laundering scheme, using Lucas's inheritance to clean dirty money and enrich themselves. Stewart felt ice settle in his chest. How much have they moved? So far? About $400,000. At this rate, they'll bleed the whole trust dry in 5 years, long before Lucas turns 18. Sims looked up. But here's the thing, Mr. Waller. If I can see this, the authorities can see it. Question is, why hasn't anyone flagged it? Because no one's looking, Stewart said. I'm deployed. Joe thinks everything's fine, and Lucas is 7. The trust doesn't require an audit unless the primary guardian requests one, which Norman never would. Sims started pulling documents, printing page after page. I can give you everything you need to prove fraud. Bank statements, property records, transaction histories. But you need to be smart about how you use it. If you go to the police now, they'll investigate, sure. But Norma will lawyer up, freeze everything, and you'll be in a legal battle for years. Meanwhile, the custody case proceeds, and you lose your son. So what do you suggest? Sims grinned, and Stewart saw why Burns had recommended him. You let them think they're winning. Let the custody case proceed. Let Norma and her lawyer stand up in court and lie about how you're unfit, how Lucas needs to be protected from you. Get it all on record under oath. And then you hand the judge proof that this entire custody case is a criminal conspiracy to defraud your son. You don't just win custody, you make sure they go to prison for what they've done. Sims leaned back in his chair. But you'll need more than financial records. You need proof that Norma knew what she was doing, that she deliberately tried to alienate Lucas from you, that she manufactured evidence against you. You need someone on the inside. Stuart thought about Johanna, about the woman he'd married, the mother of his son. Was there anything left of her under Norma's influence? Or had his wife been complicit in this from the beginning? I'll find a way, Stuart said. Just give me those records. Every transaction, every dollar, every shady deal. I want it all. As he left Sims's office, his phone rang. Johanna's name flashed on the screen. Lucas had a nightmare, she said without preamble. He's asking for you. I'll be right there. Stuart, wait. Her voice cracked. My mother says I shouldn't let you come over. She says it reinforces bad patterns, makes Lucas dependent on you. He's my son. He had a nightmare. I'm coming. She hesitated. Okay, but just to say goodnight. Then you need to leave. Stuart drove through the rain, his mind churning. Norma's control over Johanna was complete, but there had been a moment of hesitation in his wife's voice. A crack in the facade. If he could widen that crack, if he could make Johanna see what her mother really was. But that was a risk. If he pushed too hard, Norma would tighten her grip. If he didn't push hard enough, he'd lose any chance of getting through. Lucas was waiting in the doorway when he arrived, his small face tear-streaked. Stuart scooped him up, ignoring Norma's disapproving glare from the living room. Hey, champ, Mom says you had a bad dream. Lucas nodded against his shoulder. You were gone again, and Grandma said you weren't coming back. Ever. Stuart carried his son to the bedroom they shared, sitting on the edge of the bed. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Grandma says you're leaving soon, that you're going to live somewhere else, and I'll only see you sometimes. That's not. Stuart stopped himself. He couldn't lie to his son, but he couldn't tell him the truth either. Not yet. Lucas, do you remember what I taught you about bravery? That it's not about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. That's right. And right now, some grown-ups are scared. They're making decisions based on that fear. But I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? Lucas's eyes, so much like Johanna's, searched his face. What I have to do, just remember that I love you. No matter what anyone says, no matter what happens, I love you, and I'm fighting for you. Okay. The boy's grip on his shirt tightened. Daddy? Is Grandma lying when she says you're dangerous? Yes. I thought so. Lucas yawned, exhaustion pulling him towards sleep. She lies a lot. I keep a list in my head of all the lies. Stuart's heart clenched. His 7-year-old son was keeping mental notes on his grandmother's deceptions. That's very smart of you. When I grow up, I'm going to be smart like you. And I'm never going to lie. Lucas's eyes were already closing. Promise you won't leave without saying goodbye? I promise. He stayed until Lucas's breathing evened out, then found Johanna in the kitchen, staring at her phone. Norma was nowhere to be seen, and Stuart seized the opportunity. Joe, we need to talk. Really talk, without your mother listening. She looked up, and for a moment, he saw the woman he'd married. Uncertain, scared, but still there underneath the layers of Norma's manipulation. I can't, Stuart. She'll what? What does she have on you that makes you afraid of your own mother? Johanna's eyes widened, and Stuart knew he'd hit something. There was more to Norma's control than just persuasion. There was leverage. Before she could answer, the front door opened and Norma walked in, her arms full of shopping bags that probably cost more than Stuart made in a month, all bought with Lucas's inheritance. Stuart, I thought we agreed you'd only stay long enough to settle Lucas. Her voice was cold, dismissive. You're overstaying your welcome. In my son's home? I don't think that's possible. This isn't his home. It's mine. And you're here by my invitation, which I'm revoking. If you want to see Lucas again before the hearing, you can arrange it through lawyers. She set down her bags and Stuart saw the receipts. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, all of it purchased today, all of it funded by his son's stolen inheritance. Johanna, he said, not taking his eyes off Norma. Do you know where your mother gets the money for all this? That's none of your business, Norma snapped. She has investments, Johanna said quietly. From Dad's business. Does she? Stuart pulled out his phone, showing Johanna the bank statement Sims had prepared. Or is she spending Lucas's trust fund? The one my father left for his education, for his future. Look at the withdrawals, Joe. Beach house, luxury car, country club memberships, all paid for with money that's supposed to be our son's. Johanna took the phone, her face paling as she scrolled through the records. That's fabricated, Norma said, but her voice had lost its confidence. He's making this up to discredit me. Bank records don't lie, Stewart said. And when the judge sees this, the judge will see a desperate man making wild accusations. Norma interrupted, recovering her composure. You think you can come here and slander me? I have documentation of your instability, your violence, your complete unsuitability as a father. What do you have? Some questionable financial records that could mean anything. I have the truth. Truth doesn't matter in family court, Stewart. Perception does. And the perception is that you're dangerous, that Lucas needs protection from you, and that I'm the one protecting him. She smiled, venomous and confident. Now get out of my house before I call the police and add threatening behavior to the list of reasons you shouldn't have custody. Stewart looked at Johanna, saw the conflict in her eyes, the phone trembling in her hand as she stared at the evidence of her mother's betrayal. For a moment, he thought she might speak up, might break free. Then Norma put a hand on her daughter's shoulder, and Johanna handed the phone back, her face closing off. You should go, she whispered. Stewart left, but not before seeing Norma's triumphant smirk. She thought she'd won, thought he'd shown his hand too early, tipped his cards before the game was over. She had no idea he'd only shown her what he wanted her to see. Outside, sitting in his truck, Stewart pulled out his other phone, the one with the recording app running. Every word of that conversation was saved, including Norma's implicit admission that perception mattered more than truth in her strategy. Mark Singh's voice came through his earpiece. Got it all, brother. She just handed us her entire game plan. Good. Now we wait for them to commit further. Stewart started the truck. How much surveillance can you run on Raymond's business? Enough. Got a buddy who owes me a favor. He's got the equipment. We can see every meeting, every transaction. Do it. I want to know everyone Raymond talks to, every property deal he makes. If they're laundering money through Lucas's trust, I want proof of where it's going. You really think they'll be dumb enough to keep operating while the custody case is pending? They think they're untouchable. Norma's gotten away with this for 18 months without anyone challenging her. She won't stop now. She'll double down. Stewart pulled into traffic, his mind 3 steps ahead. She's going to bury herself. We just need to hand her the shovel. The next 2 weeks were a carefully orchestrated dance. Stewart played the part of the concerned father, showing up for supervised visits with Lucas, documenting every moment of Norma's interference. Every coaching session where she tried to get Lucas to say his father scared him. The boy was smarter than Norma gave him credit for. He played along in front of her, giving the answers she wanted, but in the brief moments when she stepped away, he'd whisper to his father, I'm lying. She makes me. I know, champ. It's okay. When will this be over? Soon. Meanwhile, Mark Singh's surveillance captured Raymond Henderson meeting with known money launderers, shell company operators, and real estate fraudsters. Every conversation was recorded, every transaction documented. The web Norma had woven was bigger than Stewart had imagined. They weren't just stealing from Lucas's trust. They were using it as a vehicle for organized crime, washing dirty money through seemingly legitimate property deals. Patrick Sims traced it all, connecting the dots until the picture was clear. Norma and Raymond Henderson had turned a grieving father's inheritance into a $2 million criminal enterprise. This is bigger than family court, Sims said when they met to review the evidence. This is federal. Wire fraud, money laundering, RICO violations. The FBI would love this. Not yet, Stewart said. If we go to the FBI now, Norma gets arrested, sure. But Lucas still ends up in the system while they sort out custody. I need to win this in family court first, establish legal guardianship, protect my son. Then we can bury them. That's risky. They could flee, destroy evidence. They won't. They're too arrogant. Stewart had studied Norma Henderson like he'd studied enemy commanders in Afghanistan, learning her patterns, her weaknesses. She believes she's going to win custody, get permanent control of the trust, and live the rest of her life on my son's money. She won't run from that dream. 3 days before the hearing, Stewart got the call he'd been waiting for. Mr. Waller? This is Sheila Gibson, Mrs. Henderson's attorney. The voice was professional, clipped. I'm calling to offer you a settlement. If you agree to waive all parental rights and relinquish any claim to Lucas's custody, my client is willing to guarantee generous visitation. 1 week in a month, supervised of course, and... No, Mr. Waller, I haven't finished outlining the terms. I don't care about the terms. My answer is no. I'll see you in court. He hung up and immediately called Danny Burns. They're panicking. Good. That means they've heard you're not rolling over. They're trying to avoid a public hearing where their finances might come under scrutiny. Burns sounded pleased. You rattled them when you showed Johanna those bank statements. Norma can't be sure what else you know. She's about to find out. The day before the custody hearing, Stewart had one more conversation with Lucas. Johanna allowed it, though Norma clearly objected, and Stewart used every second carefully. Tomorrow, we're going to go to court. Do you know what that means? Lucas nodded solemnly. Grandma says the judge will decide who I live with. That's right. And the judge might ask you questions. I need you to tell the truth, no matter what anyone has told you to say. Can you do that? Even if Grandma gets mad? Especially then? The truth is the most important thing, Lucas. More important than making Grandma happy. More important than not getting in trouble. Truth is what brave people tell, even when it's hard. Lucas thought about this, his young face serious beyond his years. She told me to say I'm scared of you. But I'm not. I'm scared of her. Stewart's blood ran cold. Has she hurt you? Not like hitting, but she yells a lot when you're not here. And she tells Mom that if we don't do what she says, we'll lose everything. She makes Mom cry. Lucas, I need you to be brave tomorrow. Braver than you've ever been. Can you do that for me? His son squared his small shoulders. I can be brave. The courtroom was smaller than Stewart expected, more intimate, which somehow made it worse. Across the aisle, Norma Henderson sat with Johanna, both dressed conservatively, projecting the image of concerned family members. Sheila Gibson, their attorney, had a stack of folders that Stewart knew contained manufactured evidence of his unfitness. Danny Burns sat beside Stewart, and behind them, Mark Singh waited in the gallery, ready to testify if needed. Judge Oscar Henry, a man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and tired eyes, took the bench and reviewed the case files. This is a custody dispute regarding Lucas Waller, age 7. Mrs. Henderson, you're petitioning for full custody on behalf of your daughter, Mrs. Johanna Waller, who is seeking divorce from the respondent, Stewart Waller. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Sheila Gibson said. We believe it's in Lucas's best interest to remain in the stable, secure home his grandmother has provided, given his father's deployment history and psychological condition. Your Honor, Danny Burns stood. The respondent contests these allegations and asks for the opportunity to present evidence of bad faith in this petition. Judge Henry raised an eyebrow. You're saying this isn't about the child's welfare? I'm saying it's about $2 million, Your Honor. And I can prove it. The courtroom went silent. Norma's composure slipped for just a second, a flash of panic before the mask returned. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Burns, the judge said. I have serious evidence, Your Honor. But first, I think the court should hear Mrs. Henderson's case. Let her paint her picture of my client. Then we'll show you the truth. Judge Henry considered this. Very well. Mrs. Gibson, call your first witness. Sheila Gibson called Norma Henderson to the stand. Norma took the oath with practiced ease, settling into the witness chair like she'd rehearsed it 100 times, which Stewart thought she probably had. Mrs. Henderson, please tell the court about your concerns regarding Stewart Waller's fitness as a father, Gibson prompted. And Norma performed beautifully. She spoke of Stewart's long absences, his documented anger issues, the way he'd raise his voice during phone calls with Lucas. She produced recordings, carefully edited clips that made Stewart sound harsh and aggressive, cutting out the connection problems and Lucas's laughter. I fear for my grandson's safety, Norma said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. Mr. Waller has been trained as a soldier, trained to use violence. He's been deployed to war zones where he's likely killed people. How can we trust that he won't snap? That he won't hurt Lucas in a moment of PTSD-induced confusion? Has he ever hurt Lucas? Gibson asked. Not yet, but the potential is there. The danger is real. Norma looked directly at the judge. My grandson deserves to grow up without fear. He deserves stability, safety, a home where he doesn't have to worry about his father's next deployment or violent episode. I can give him that. I've been giving him that for the past 18 months while his father was absent. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. Gibson sat down with a satisfied smile. Danny Burns approached the stand slowly, holding a single folder. Mrs. Henderson, you said you've been providing stability for Lucas for 18 months. Where do you get the income to support a child, a daughter, and yourself? I have a pension from teaching and my late husband's investments. Your pension is approximately $1,800 a month, correct? Norma shifted. Approximately. And yet you purchased a beach house in Florida 6 months ago for $300,000. Cash sale. How did you afford that on $1,800 a month? My husband's investments. Your husband's business hasn't turned a profit in 3 years, according to these tax returns. Burns laid out the documents. So where did the money come from, Mrs. Henderson? Sheila Gibson stood. Objection, Your Honor. Mrs. Henderson's finances aren't relevant to this custody dispute. They're when she's spending the child's trust fund, Burns said calmly. Your Honor, I have evidence that Mrs. Henderson has been systematically looting Lucas Waller's inheritance to fund her lifestyle and her husband's business ventures. Judge Henry leaned forward. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mrs. Henderson. Norma's face flushed. I've been managing Lucas's trust. All expenditures have been for his benefit. A beach house he's never visited? A Mercedes you drive daily? Country club memberships in your name? Burns laid photo after photo on the evidence table. Norma at the beach house. Raymond driving the Mercedes. Credit card statements from the country club. These are all charged against Lucas's educational trust. $400,000 in 18 months, Mrs. Henderson. For a 7-year-old's education. They're investments in his future. They're fraud. Burns pulled out the property records Sims had compiled. You and your husband have been using Lucas's trust to purchase cheap land through shell companies, then selling it at inflated prices to launder money. You've involved my client's son in organized crime, Mrs. Henderson. And when Mr. Waller came home from deployment and could potentially audit the trust, you suddenly decided he was an unfit father. Convenient timing. That's not. This is ridiculous. Is it? Burns approached the bench, handing the judge a thick envelope. Your Honor, this contains bank statements, property records, transaction histories, and recordings of Raymond Henderson meeting with known money launderers. I also have testimony from Patrick Sims, a forensic accountant, who can explain exactly how the Hendersons have been bleeding Lucas's trust fund dry. Judge Henry opened the envelope, his expression darkening as he reviewed the contents. The silence stretched painfully. Norma gripped the armrest of the witness stand, her knuckles white. Mrs. Henderson, the judge said slowly, did you or did you not use funds from Lucas Waller's educational trust to purchase personal property and invest in your husband's business ventures? Aye. The trust allows for expenses related to his care. Did you purchase a beach house with trust funds? Norma hesitated too long. Yes, but did you use trust funds to invest in your husband's real estate company? Yes, but it was for Lucas's future benefit. Did you manufacture evidence of Mr. Waller's unfitness as a father in order to maintain control of this trust? No, he really is dangerous. He really is unfit. Your Honor, Burns interrupted. I have recordings of Mrs. Henderson coaching Lucas to lie about his father. I have testimony from the child himself, if the court wishes to hear it, about his grandmother's manipulation. This entire custody petition is a fraud designed to steal from a 7-year-old boy. Judge Henry set down the documents, his face grave. Mrs. Gibson, does your client wish to continue with this petition? Sheila Gibson looked at Norma, who sat frozen on the witness stand, her careful composure completely shattered. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my client. Denied. Judge Henry's voice was ice. Mrs. Henderson, step down. I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice. Custody of Lucas Waller is awarded to his father, Stuart Waller, effective immediately. He turned to the bailiff. Place Mrs. Norma Henderson under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Bailiff, notify the district attorney's office immediately. The courtroom erupted. Norma screamed, "This is outrageous. You can't." "I can. And I have," Judge Henry said coldly. "Mr. Henderson, you're also under arrest." Bailiff, Raymond Henderson, who'd been sitting in the gallery trying to blend into the woodwork, bolted for the door. Mark Singh stepped into his path, and Raymond went down hard. Two bailiffs were on him in seconds. Through the chaos, Stewart's eyes found Johanna. She was crying, her hand over her mouth, staring at her mother being handcuffed. When she looked at Stewart, he saw not hatred or anger, but relief. Lucas sat in the front row, where a social worker had been watching him. The boy looked at his grandmother in handcuffs, then at his father. And slowly, for the first time in months, Lucas smiled. The aftermath took weeks to sort through. The district attorney's office built their case using Stewart's evidence, adding charges of wire fraud and racketeering. The FBI got involved when they discovered the extent of Raymond's money laundering operation. Turns out, Lucas's trust was just one of several vehicles they'd been using. Norma and Raymond Henderson were both denied bail. The beach house, the Mercedes, everything purchased with trust funds was seized and liquidated. The money returned to Lucas's account. What was left of it? Johanna moved out of her mother's apartment and into a small place of her own. She and Stewart met at a coffee shop 2 weeks after the hearing. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small. "I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. Should have questioned." "She was your mother," Stewart said. "You trusted her. She was poisoning me against you for months. Every phone call, every conversation, she'd find a way to make you seem dangerous, unstable. And I believed her because..." Johanna looked down at her hands. "Because it was easier than admitting I was scared you wouldn't come back. That I'd be alone. When she offered to take care of everything, to make all the decisions, I let her because I was weak. You weren't weak. You were manipulated. I let her use our son," Johanna said, tears streaming down her face. "I let her coach him to lie about you. I stood by while she stole from him. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Stewart. I know I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what she did, what I let her do. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to Lucas." Stewart was quiet for a long moment. "The divorce? I'll withdraw the petition if you want. Or we can proceed with it. Either way, I want joint custody. I want to be Lucas's mother, if you'll let me. If he'll let me. That's not my decision to make. That's his." Stewart finished his coffee. "But Joe, you need therapy. Real therapy. Not whatever your mother was filling your head with. You need to understand how she manipulated you, so it never happens again. I've already started." She showed him a card from a therapist. "First session was yesterday." "Good." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, the woman I married is still in there somewhere. The woman who would have fought for her family instead of letting her mother tear it apart. Find her again. For Lucas." 3 months later, Stewart sat in the bleachers of Lucas's Little League game, watching his son play third base with more enthusiasm and skill. The boy's smile was genuine now, no longer the careful performance Norma had demanded. Johanna sat a few rows down with her own chair, respecting the boundaries they'd established. They were working toward co-parenting, slowly rebuilding trust. The divorce had gone through, but they shared joint custody. Lucas spent weekdays with Stewart and weekends with Johanna, and slowly, the boy was learning to trust his mother again. Mark Singh dropped onto the bench beside Stewart, handing him a beer. "Heard the sentencing was today." "Yeah." Norma got 8 years federal prison. Raymond got 12. They pinned the money laundering mostly on him. "Think they'll actually serve it all?" "Don't care." Stewart watched Lucas field a ground ball and throw to first, late, but the effort was there. "They're out of our lives. That's what matters. Kid's doing good." "Yeah, he is." Lucas looked toward the bleachers, saw his dad, and waved enthusiastically. Stewart waved back. "He keeps that list, you know. The one he mentioned, with all his grandmother's lies. He's writing them down now. Says he's going to give it to his therapist. Smart kid. Smartest person I know." Stewart smiled as Lucas struck out swinging, but jogged back to the dugout without a trace of the defeated slump that used to follow every failure. He's going to be okay. So are you, brother. Stuart thought about that. The trust was secure, managed by Danny Burns until Lucas turned 18. Therapy was helping both him and Lucas process the trauma. He'd enrolled in college classes, planning to finish the degree he'd abandoned when he enlisted. Life was moving forward. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. The game continued, Little League in all its chaotic glory. Lucas got another at-bat in the 5th inning and hit a grounder that squeaked through the infield for a single. He stood on first base, grinning like he'd won the World Series. Stuart's phone buzzed. A text from Danny Burns. Final trust audit complete. Recovered $1.67 million of the original $2 million. Rest is tied up in seized property that should liquidate within a year. Your father would be proud. He pocketed the phone and watched his son, standing on first base, safe at home in all the ways that mattered. Norma Henderson had tried to steal everything. His family, his son, his father's legacy. She'd built an elaborate scheme, manipulated everyone around her, and convinced herself she was untouchable. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated a soldier who'd learned to plan, to be patient, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. In the end, it wasn't about the money or even the custody. It was about justice, about protecting his son, about ensuring that the people who'd tried to destroy his family faced the consequences of their actions. Lucas stole second base on a wild pitch, and the crowd cheered. Stuart cheered loudest of all, knowing that his son was finally, truly free. The game ended with Lucas's team losing by 3 runs, but nobody seemed to care. The kids swarmed the snack stand, and Lucas ran up to his father, still in his dusty uniform. "Did you see my hit, Dad? Did you see it?" "I saw it, champ. You did great. Can we get ice cream?" Mom said she'd take me if you said it was okay. Stuart looked at Johanna, who stood nearby with a hopeful, hesitant expression. "Yeah, that sounds good. We can all go." Lucas's smile could have lit the whole field. As they walked to the parking lot, Lucas slipped his small hand into Stuart's larger one, and Stuart felt the weight of the past months lift. The battle was over. The enemy was defeated. His family, broken and rearranged, but his family nonetheless was safe. That was a victory worth fighting for. And in the end, that's exactly what he'd done.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.